Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call today's meeting of the Mansfield Downtown Partnership Board of Directors to order for Thursday, January 5th. We appreciate you all accommodating the virtual nature of this. We just figured with a 4:30 start and a rather light agenda that it would be more convenient for folks to do this virtually. So Happy New Year to everybody, and we appreciate you taking the time as always. Cynthia, do we have any public comment submitted for this?
No public comment submitted.
Fantastic. Okay. Item 3 on our agenda is the approval of minutes from the November 3rd, 2022 meeting. And that is in your packet. I will give everybody a minute to take a look, find it, review it briefly, and then I'm happy to take a motion to approve. Tony?
Move to approve the minutes.
So moved. A second?
Second.
Yep. Mario, second. All in favor? Any opposed? Fantastic.
I abstain. I wasn't at the last meeting.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Okay. Before we dive into the executive director report, as you all know, our friend and colleague Denise is going to be leaving her role with the partnership. You know, we wanted to take a moment here and in hindsight, obviously we wish we could be in person. We know that there's going to be a luncheon and some folks will be joining that in person. You know, Cynthia put some notes together for me, and so for the record, I will cover a couple of those and then certainly open it up to anybody that would like to say anything to Denise. But Denise has started a position as event coordinator in April of 2019. As you all are aware, you know, our main duties revolve around event planning, coordination, and management of many and most of the major events: Summer Stroll, the Tour de Mansfield, Moonlight Movies, Celebrate Mansfield Festival, Trick or Treat, Winter Welcome. We all know how creative she is, and all the new things that she would bring to these events on an annual basis. So you know, she's also worked very collaboratively with the folks here at UConn, with student groups, for the student groups to play music on the square. That Husky Student Showcase has grown and certainly will continue to. She's worked very closely with Emily on outdoor puppet performances. You know, and again, I don't think it can be overlooked the amount of work that Denise and certainly others, but certainly, you know, Denise did a lot of really cool things during the early months of the pandemic. You know, when there was an ability to get people outside and create safe environments for events or other things. Obviously, she had to be very flexible with a lot of those different things. So, you know, certainly for me, someone that was new to the board at that time, and then as I was a part of the Celebrate Mansfield Festival working group, and could not be more impressed with the work and effort and dedication that she always put into all of it. You know, and I remember saying to her in one of those meetings, because I think among other things, she's incredibly thoughtful, and in some cases was deferential, maybe to a fault. And I remember saying to her, Denise, you're the expert on this. You're the event planner, and we're here to support you. And I really appreciated that she cared about the people on the committees and the working groups and the volunteers. She was always open to advice or ideas. And at the end of the day, you know, despite, you know, a million people coming at her and coming in a million different directions, she always kept her cool, and pulled off some really fantastic events on behalf of the partnership. And you know, we were fortunate to have her. She leaves gigantic shoes to fill, and but I'm excited for you, Denise, and for you and your family and the opportunity that you have ahead of you. And we're going to miss you a lot. So, I at this point, I'm happy to open it up to anybody else, and then we'll finish by letting Denise say a couple words. But anybody have anything they would like to add?
I would just offer, as town manager, my interactions with Denise have been great. Some of the ways that she gets involved in an event planning role when it comes to transportation safety issues and working with our local traffic authority on, these are not necessarily the glamorous things about what makes an event go smoothly, but obviously we want to make sure that safety is maintained for the traveling public and pedestrians taking part in events. And she's always just very organized, very enthusiastic, very, very well put together all around. So definitely appreciate that. And we're going to miss you.
Tony?
I don't want to say anything negative about her predecessors, but what Denise brought made a visible change and improvement in our programs and programming. So I must say it's a shock to learn that you are leaving, and I hope you do something really, really good, because we are really going to miss you.
And sorry, go ahead, Frank.
Frank, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, sure. I just wanted to say there's a really important role that the partnership plays in bringing a community together, and to do that during the conditions of a pandemic were really astounding. It was an important part of what we do. And Denise, I think your ability to organize made it easier for volunteers to plug in, feel like we were participating and helping you, although we know you were doing so much of the work. But we'll really miss working with you in that way, and best of luck.
Molly?
I was just going to say, I think working with Denise on the Celebrate Mansfield Festival Committee, but then also in my role as the Ballard Institute, I just have gotten to know Denise so well, and she's just one of the kindest people to work with. But I've learned so much from her just because of how organized she is, how cool, calm, and collected she can be, but how she continues to be creative with her ideas. It's not the status quo with her. She comes up with new ideas constantly, but always, thinks of all the problems or things that could go wrong ahead of time. And it's just amazing what she's able to pull off. And really, I think the Celebrate Mansfield Festival is just one of many things that, she just continued to amaze me, what she was able to do with such little, but make them such rewarding and amazing events, and really make the businesses, feel welcome and feel excited to participate in these events. So I think we're really going to miss you at the Ballard Institute, Denise.
I have to say, probably my favorite memory of Denise is in the early times of the pandemic, when we were having some of the committee meetings, and she'd be doing them from her kitchen, and her family would be buzzing around her behind. And I wanted the pandemic to end because I wanted us to get back to normal, but mostly I wanted it to end so she could get out of her kitchen and get a little peace and quiet. I don't think there was any doubt that there was. We've all been in a lot of virtual meetings over the last several years, and I can honestly say that Denise had the most activity in the background of all the meetings. So it was, it just happened that they were always at dinner time, and and that's a busy time in anybody's household. So and to pull off everything that she pulled off with all of that going on was inspiring for sure. Anyone else? Or how about Denise? What do you have to say, Denise? Have you changed your mind?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I just want to say thank you so much. It has been wonderful working with this team. I think that as a group, the staff and board of the partnership are so supportive and work really well together. And it has been fantastic working with you all. And it's tough because what Kyle was just talking about, that's kind of exactly why I'm moving on. it's one of those tough things. I think I actually said exactly this to Cynthia earlier, so I'm sorry to repeat myself, but with parenting, I mean, it's learning as you go. You never know what you need until you're in the midst of it. And so it's just kind of over the last kind of few years, kind of seeing, I really am just looking to be able to be more available in evenings and weekends. And even though the partnership, it's not a ton of commitments during those times, it's this position I'm moving into that it just won't be, it won't be asked of me, which is that's why I'm moving on. But I still live in Mansfield, and so this is not goodbye.
Yeah.
You will still see me. I'm very excited to continue supporting all the work that you do in the downtown. Coming and attending the events. My little guy will be there. We'll come to the puppet shows. We will come to the events. And I would love to continue helping as a volunteer with the work that you do, because I think it is really important. And as part of the community, I think what we as a team and what you as a board really bring to this community is just amazing. So I look forward to supporting you from that side. But thank you so much for the kind words and for all of your support over the last few years through the pandemic and into this recovery period. It has been wonderful working with you.
Well, and I think that we did tell Cynthia that she had to put that in your separation agreement, that you would immediately transition to committee roles and working groups and other things. So, I mean, nobody's getting off the hook this easy. You can't just quit and leave us. So.
Well, I figure, I mean, I wouldn't completely leave either way, but I definitely, I'm here and I do believe in the work. So I can't, especially since I'm looking for less nights. I don't know how many nights I can commit to, but I definitely will be here to volunteer with the events.
Well, at least we know who one of the area captains will be for next year's Celebrate Mansfield Festival. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Denise. And we're not going to let you off the hook. We're going to make you perform one last action as a part of the executive director report. When we transition into that here, we're going to have you give an update on winter welcome. So, but thank you again, Denise. And certainly, I think Cynthia sent you sent an invite around for.
I did, yeah. So if you can attend next Wednesday at noon at Kathmandu, if you can let me know by Monday, just so I can make the reservation, that would be great. And I know a couple of folks are coming, but if you are going to attend, just let me know.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Denise. Okay, well, we'll transition into the executive director report, and Cynthia, I'll turn it over to you, and I think you were going to have Denise do a little bit for you.
Yeah, so I'll turn it over to Denise. We didn't meet in December, so if Denise can give an overview of Winter Welcome and how it went, and see if there's any comments or questions from the board about the event and going forward, any other ideas.
So Winter Welcome was a little bit chaotic this year, just due to the weather. It was interesting in the week, kind of looking up, kind of moving before the event. We knew that there was the potential for wind and rain, but this particular event, because it had been promoted as rain or shine, we really felt as long as it was safe conditions that we should try to move forward, which is why we made the decision to move forward as we did. That being said, we managed to find alternatives for a lot of the event. So we did have a total of 7 display setups in the Nash Simmer. It was a little crowded, but everyone that wanted to participate, that was able to participate, did join us in the Nash Simmer. In that space, we also had performances by the Yukon Tap Club, the Snow Sisters, as well as we had story time presented by the just gonna pull up, I'm so sorry, Colby, the name of this group, UTESA, the Yukon Teachers Education Student Association. And that was a great addition. That was actually an idea that came to us from Kristen Delay, who was a real help in sort of getting some ideas moving. And the goal for next year is to bring her into the planning of the event a little bit sooner, as well as looking for not a full committee, but more of a planning team to help move that event forward. In Barnes and Noble, we had a new sorry, just because I'm gonna go back to being a mom here. We were lucky to have Santa Claus join us. And he joined us from 4 to 6 p.m., which was not, again, exactly what we anticipated going into the event, but actually that time frame worked out very well. Our friends at Barnes and Noble hosted that, and this is actually the first time they've hosted Santa Claus since before the pandemic, so it was nice to see that return to that space. We also had 2 volunteers that joined us, Al and Kate Frattoni, at the Santa Claus experience, which was great. And then at the Ballard Institute, with the open wall open into Barnes and Noble, we were really excited to have 2 performances. Nanette Adesso gave a solo performance, and then Husky Hungama, the a cappella group, also performed in that space. And then kind of extending even more into the Ballard Institute actually presented their sort of light display puppetry show. It was a little bit of a mix of a light show with some puppetry. And that was right in the exhibit hall in the Ballard Institute. Unfortunately, kind of from the negative perspective, the wind, our public works team worked really hard to try to get the trees to stand at Betsy Patterson Square, and really there was just, they couldn't do it safely with the supplies that we had. So what we did end up doing, the resident state troopers did continue with the toy drive, the Stuffer Cruiser at Betsy Patterson Square, and 1 tree was able to stand there. So that tree, I don't know if anyone looked closely, I think it had 7 sandbags on that 1 tree. But they did get that tree standing. The rest of the trees from the Trim a Tree contest were donated to families on the following Monday with the toys from the toy drive. So it was something that we were able to give back to the community, even though the contest did not itself happen. I would say I would also just give sort of a general applause to the public works team. They were amazing. They were out kind of in the worst of it, the heavy rains in the early afternoon. That was the time frame when we were closing the streets and looking at trying to set up the electrical and the trees, and they, just grinned and bared it and did an amazing job. They were fantastic. Similarly, we had 7 volunteers, mostly from this team with the board, and just thank you to everyone who came and volunteered for that event. I think it was, I know on the day I said this, but I think it really does explain it. It wasn't even like a plan B. We were on plan C, D, E. We were working our way through backup plans, and I think everybody did a great job rolling with the punches and just accepting whatever the new situation was. So thank you so much for your help. And then attendance wise, we actually did pretty well. We had about 150 guests join us. All of the gift bags were handed out. With the gift bags, we had 17 businesses that participated in that, both from the downtown and from the wider Mansfield community. That is an aspect that has really grown in the last few years. That started as a backup plan with our drive-through in 2020. And I think that it really has been a great addition to the Winter Welcome event. So hopefully that will continue to grow with promotions from businesses throughout the town.
So I would just say, as a parent that was there with our young kids, I think, given the given the unfortunate weather you were dealt, I know it was more than just you, Denise, but I have to say, it really was impressive the way, the trying to make lemonade from lemons. I thought you guys pivoted nicely, and it was, if nothing else, it was great to give people an opportunity that probably never stepped foot in the Nash Center, transportation center, a chance for them to see that facility and kind of get a sense of what's going on there in the inside, and the satellite library that we had, the Library Express. So I thought you guys did a bang up job, under the circumstances.
Thank you so much. And that actually, it's something I forgot. I did want to let you all know, the partnership staff had in our planning for 2023, we kind of had a conversation about what to do about Winter Welcome next year. Do we want a rain date or do we want alternatives? And the conclusion that we came to was really that it would be best to find indoor alternatives for every element of the event for next year, sort of to have that done in advance. So we know the date will never change, but there might be programs that move inside. Some of the things that we discussed were working with the business owners so that they knew they might be backup locations for performances or for displays. We also talked about meeting with the E.O. Smith to see if the atrium or other parts of the school might be a backup. Specifically, we were thinking about where the display of trees might work. So E.O. Smith was considered as a backup, and also the community center. So that was sort of the plan for next year, is to look at talking to all of those groups, the businesses, E.O. Smith, the community center, to find those backup locations well in advance so that we know kind of where we would move to in the worst case scenario. Does anybody have any questions?
I would just add a comment that I agree. I think people always want a rain date or a snow date, but the fact of the matter is people schedule themselves, and then when it's a different date, you always get drop off. It's not helpful to vendors in general. It's just it's better to have the plan that you have about moving inside.
That was the conversation exactly that we had, Kara, was sort of thinking about kind of how in general it's challenging for any event to have a rain date, but especially at that time of the year, so many people have plans for every week in December.
Anything else, excuse me, for Denise? All right, so I'll just go over a couple of things under the executive director report. So we are starting to gear up for Restaurant Week Year 2, which will be February 20th to March 5th. And Kathleen's very involved in that process, working with Margaret in Ryan's office, and then working with the team. I'm sorry, Kathleen, they're not called Thread City Development anymore, right?
Wilmanic Downtown Neighborhood Association.
Thank you. So working with Chris, with that group, Chris Minobi, and Andrew with Stone Row Kitchen. So stay tuned for some more information once the website gets up to date. And Kathleen's already given a heads up to our restaurants that participated last year that we'll have information along the way. So hoping to make it bigger and better this year. So many thanks to Kathleen for all her work on that. So
Can I ask a question about that, Cynthia?
sure.
Last time there was a sort of a rule that it couldn't be a chain. And one of the consequences was that there were some restaurants left out and some that got in that actually had other locations. I'm not sure how you define chain, but I think that however the rules are written, they should be more inclusive, because all of these, even if it's a chain, there's some local people running it.
Yeah, and I remember you bringing that up last year, Tony. So we definitely took that into consideration, and so we do have an expanded list from what we had last year. Yep, Brian.
I'll go on my diet now so I can increase my food intake for the couple of weeks that's coming up.
All right.
Just make a comment on media coverage last year. We seem to somehow be left out on some of the coverage. Do we have, plans in place to make sure the media covers Mansfield a little more thoroughly?
I want to put Kathleen on the spot again.
Yeah, I think there was two things going on last year. It was our first time partnering with these organizations, so there was some feeling each other out there, like how assignments would be. We also were trying to get the individual restaurants to do some of their own promotion, so we provided them with materials, and there was, I would say, a mix of responses to that. And so some restaurateurs were really eager to get out and promote it, and others weren't. And so the media coverage kind of followed from there. So having seen that this year, we're going to try to be a little bit more deliberative from the organizational standpoint. So we have been talking about, collaborating and pushing that out in a more comprehensive way, and not asking the rest. I mean, we still want the restaurants to do some promotion, but maybe taking the lead a little bit more, so that it's not falling on folks who maybe aren't as used to going to the media.
Any other questions on Restaurant Week?
There was one other comment. It wasn't widespread anyway, but some of the restaurants that I actually visited did not have the menu items that were on the specials for the Restaurant Week. That kind of surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, we heard that through some feedback we received from people, participants. We also had some feedback that at some restaurants it appeared that the staff wasn't aware of the program. So one of the things what we're working on is trying to make sort of like a real easy, for lack of better words, like toolkit for success for the restaurants to really specify some steps that they need to do to make this program successful for themselves and for the whole group. I think what we found was that in trying to reach out to some restaurants that wouldn't normally participate in this kind of thing, we probably needed to do a little bit more education beforehand for the restaurants that maybe have either experienced in other communities or would participate in something like this more traditionally speaking. I think they were probably better prepped than some of our outliering ones. So we are trying, so we'll see how it goes. Feedback is welcome though.
Yeah, well, some things aren't in our control either, right?
That is true.
That's a good point. So
Just
the other,
to back up what Brian said, I ate in two places, and one of them had basically none of the dishes that were on the specials list. So, and I actually went to this place because of that particular dish, and it wasn't there. So, and maybe some of this is supply chain issues, but if we can emphasize that false advertising doesn't work very well, that would help.
I would chalk it up a little bit, Tony, to first year growing pains. And as Kathleen said, our education outreach and her toolkit / cheat sheet, that's definitely something that's part of it. We talked about that with the team quite extensively. So fingers crossed it will be a little smoother as far as that goes. So just a couple of other things, unless there are other questions on Restaurant Week, or Taste of Towns, I should say. So late November, early December, we spent 2 days with the Merge team that's putting together the wayfinding and signage plan. So I had a lot of help from Kathleen, as well as Derek DeLay and Jennifer Kaufman at the town, going with me and with the Merge, with Glenn from Merge. So they have almost finished programming where all the signs will go. Again, this is a comprehensive signage program for the entire town, not just the downtown. Sean was also involved in the downtown piece in person. So Kathleen and I have a meeting next Thursday with Glenn and John from Merge to check in on where we are, what our next steps are. You know, our goal is to try to get some of the signs, well, out to bid and then some of them up this summer. We've got to work on a phased in plan due to budgeting. So, but we're excited to try to bring the plan to fruition. I hope by end of February or beginning of March. The other piece is, oh yeah, Brian.
Just a comment on the signs. I know there's not a lot of room, you know, to put larger signs actually in the downtown. But I noticed a nice digital sign in Willimantic on the corner of Main Street and Jackson. Have we considered any sort of digital signage where you can actually post events that are coming up as people drive by, they can see?
So we do have the sign that Public Works does put up when we do have events like the festival, you know, at the corner of South Eagleville and 195. We have talked a little bit about the kiosks down, and this isn't directly addressing your question, but for pedestrians to have some information, but it is expensive to do that. So what we're looking at right now is a little bit more traditional in terms of landmark signs in front of our buildings. So that's what we're looking. I think there's a lot of different opinions on digital versus non-digital as well.
I figured I'd just toss that out there.
Yeah, sure. Yes, Rachel.
I also agree about landmark signs, or at least for the participating restaurants, because if some people are unaware of Restaurant Week, they may be walking by and they'll see a recognizable sign in front of a participating restaurant, and that could encourage them to go inside as well.
Yeah, we will be having, Kathleen, do you want to address that real quick as far as the participating restaurants, what they'll have?
Yeah, I think maybe we're talking about a couple things here, but for Restaurant Week, it'll be similar to how we promote our other events, with like a general poster up for a few weeks prior to the event to get people to know that the program's happening. But then during the week, we're developing some sort of signage specifically for the participating restaurants to display that will be a little bit more eye-catching and special. We haven't gotten that far yet in the design as a team, so I don't know exactly what that'll look like. And then in terms of the merge signage, the signage plan, I think a lot of it is going to be like how it rolls out, as Cynthia mentioned, is going to be really budget dependent, especially as supplies costs have fluctuated greatly since we started this project, which was only, you know, less than a year ago. So some of that's just going to have to be, you know, there is a limit. So we'll see what we can do.
Any other questions on the wayfinding and signage plan? Okay, so I just had 3 other quick updates. So on the American Rescue Plan Act funding, we are just about complete with reviewing the applications for round 2. Again, this is a program that Ryan and the council initiated as part of a way to help our businesses. So 19 were approved in round 1, and we're about at 18 for round 2. And again, this is a mix of businesses, nonprofits were added in the second round, really a good mix throughout the town too, not just the downtown, actually probably more outside of the downtown. So I think this has been a great program, and you know, people have been very appreciative. So, you know, thank you again to the council and to Ryan for that initiative. Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, will you be providing the board of directors with a list of businesses and nonprofits that took advantage of that?
I think I want to talk to Ryan about that a little bit because I want to be able to, protect their personal information. So I think I think I need to have a further conversation maybe with Ryan about that. Ryan.
Yep, Cynthia and I will talk, and we obviously these are people reaching out to request financial assistance, to get through a rough patch or series of rough patches, and so obviously, you can respect or understand their desire probably not to have all of that broadcast, but we'll confer and we'll figure out the best approach. We understand why there would be interest in the board.
Yeah, it would remain confidential, I would hope.
All right, so we will,
Presented to the board, it's public information. So I'm not sure that it would be possible to keep it confidential.
we'll chat and come up with a plan. So the other piece that, and just to mention right now, because we're actually close to being done with that, and I will bring Frank in at some point, but Josh and I have been working over the last 2 months with interviewing data management firms. So this was a priority out of the strategic plan to try to find a system that is a little bit more sophisticated than our Excel spreadsheets. So we have interviewed, I think 4 firms. Thank you, Josh.
We interviewed 3, and then there was a 4th one that I watched an online demo for. So
Right.
feels like 4 to me.
Yeah, it's been interesting. And so Josh has drafted a memo to me, and I need to review it. I think we have one more meeting next week, a follow-up meeting, and then we'd like to circle back with Frank and governance and talk through that. Our goal would be to potentially kick this off at the beginning of the next fiscal year, because we'll start doing our membership drive, but we're not prepared to use this software yet. So we'll go through one more cycle of kind of the traditional way we do things. But I think this, what we've seen, it can do a lot of things. So we're excited to present that to governance at some point. And then the last thing, I just wanted to follow up from my email before the holidays on the pre-application that came into the Planning and Zoning Commission with respect to the corner of South Eagleville Road and Stores Road, adjacent to Mansfield Apartments, for proposed Chipotle. I did attend the commission meeting. Their meetings are all virtual. I'm not sure if anybody else was able to do that, but a lot of the discussion was about traffic, what might be generated by traffic. Again, this is a non-binding discussion that the commission allowed, I think it's probably 5 or so years ago, to do these pre-application meetings. So my understanding in listening to this is that the development team was going to look at the comments and then kind of regroup. And as far as I know, I haven't heard of anything else coming into Director of Planning, Jennifer Kaufman. So just wanted to update you on where that is. And that's all I had, Kyle, unless there's other questions or.
Sounds great. Perfect.
And I don't know if Denise and Kathleen, I know they've got a
Yeah.
couple of other commitments. If they want to sign off, that would be fine too.
Thank you again, Denise, and thanks, Kathleen, for joining.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year, everybody.
You too. Okay, on to working group and committee reports and any action items. Any,
Kyle, I'm sorry, excuse me. I see Kara had her hand up. Did you?
No, that was supposed to be an applause reaction that fell flat in the Zoom. Some of the other ones have animation. Apparently this one does not.
Perfect. Okay, well, I do not have an update on sustainable funding. And Sean and Steve are neither on, so we will hop along beyond the working group updates. Emily, do you have anything on Celebrate Mansfield that you'd like to pass along?
We have our first meeting next week.
Fantastic, very exciting. Nothing on executive. Frank, why don't you jump in on anything on governance relative to the board assessment, or just a reminder, and then we can turn over to Tony on the financials.
Sure. Yeah, for the governance committee, we like the board, we didn't meet in December, but so our last meeting was November 28th, and we discussed a lot about the annual board assessment survey. You know, these tools are really important for an organization, their best practices, because really nobody directly oversees the board. So it is vital that we take really an objective look at ourselves as individual directors, as well as how we function as a group to assess ourselves. And you know, I think as some of the discussion that we had in governance was that, you know, not only do we want to make sure we're a healthy organization, but we want to make sure that each of our members, coming from your own background, are getting the most out of your board service too. And we're lucky to have on our governance committee a couple of former presidents, as well as Kyle sitting in on that. How this tool is used, and it's very helpful for them to get the input from you guys directly as to how you think it's going and what you want to see. So I think, Cynthia, you sent out, it was last month, an email that had it, but I see it was also in the packet, what the survey is. Certainly this gives you some check the box kind of thing and so prompting questions, but if you've got any comment, even if it doesn't falls outside one of these questions, just put it down and get it directly to Kyle by next Friday, right, the 13th. And because then Kyle will then bring it a sort of a summary of that and sort of the findings to our next governance committee meeting. So thank you very much for participating. It's really helpful to get 100% participation in this.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to see that survey completely anonymous if that's possible.
You don't have to put, you can, if you don't want to put, we'll take the information. It's helpful to know who's submitting it. We don't see it as the governance committee. We don't see the raw data. That's why it goes to Kyle, so that he can sort of make general assessments of it. So it is in some ways filtered a bit, Brian.
But Kyle will see everything, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I would prefer anonymous if that was possible.
Not sure how we could accommodate that.
Survey Monkey, there's programs out there that you could use to make it blind.
Well, I think we're going to stick with the process that we have here. We just approved this form in our last governance committee. So let's follow through with that. If there's any additional input that wants to be provided, they can always be provided independently as an anonymous contribution.
And I think I would just add, it's meant to be a constructive and contextual assessment, not an anonymous assessment. So you know, again, we're looking for real-time input based on board experience. And, you know, so if there's something about the way the board operates that that folks are unhappy with or would like to see changed, then they should put their name on it.
Yeah, and this is a small enough group, right? It's meant really to prompt conversations, make sure we're not missing anything, and to make the experience as positive as possible. So let's see what the results are.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Frank. Okay, Tony, we'll turn it over to you, finance and growth, and all the The financials are in the attachment. Is there anything that we need to cover on that?
There's nothing particularly interesting. You've seen almost all of this in the past. This is just the last quarter. So the committee recommends that you approve it. And I would move that you approve the financials as they are presented.
We just vote on those now? Cynthia, we don't need do we need to?
Well, it comes from a committee. You don't
Yeah,
really
we
need a
don't need to
second.
do any of that, correct? Yeah, so we don't need a second. So we can just, so all in favor of approval of the financials as presented? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Fantastic.
Let me just add that the committee is beginning to work on the budget for the next fiscal year. We've had a look at an initial draft and we've sent it back with some questions for some follow-up. The town has asked the various departments to present their budgets in December, but our budget is one of the last ones to be finalized, so we have some flexibility in terms of time, and we're going to be looking at that. When it's ready, we'll explain to you what the differences are. The good thing is both the university and the town have committed to an extra contribution. We're now up to, is it 160 or 175?
175.
175. The number's just, what's the number here or there? 0 or 2, who knows? But anyway, we're very grateful for the commitment from the university and from the town.
Absolutely. Great. Okay. Next on the agenda is to draw your attention to the correspondence and communications that are, as always, part of the packet. And that with that, is there anything else that anyone has for the good of the order before we adjourn? Fantastic. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Happy New Year, everybody. Move to adjourn.
Tony with a motion. Can I have a second? Colby the second. All in favor? Any opposed? Fantastic. Have a great night, everybody. Happy New Year, and
Happy New Year.
we'll see you all soon.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.
Aye.
Bye now.